American Legacy Network remembers J. Raymond Jones, considered the man to see in Harlem. John Raymond Jones's goal was to prove to the citizens of New York and the country that race has no bearing on ability to lead a political organization.
J. Raymond Jones, a fox is what they called him, was a brilliant man.
Jones was recognized for his 6-foot stature and well-tailored suits. During his time as Democratic leader, he mentored young politicians who included Adam Clayton Powell, the first black congressman from Harlem. He was also very influential in the political rise of the group known as the Gang of Four. It included David Dinkins, the first black mayor of New York City, and former Manhattan Borough President Percy Sutton. He also mentored Charles Rangel, one of the longest-serving members of Congress, and Basil Patterson, former state senator and New York Secretary of State.
Who were the people who were on the inside? Who were the people who were...
A man by the name of Adam Powell, a man by the name of J. Raymond Jones, and a number of other persons, but they were the outstanding people. They were the real leaders.
The man known as the Harlem Kingmaker was born in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands on November 19, 1899. He was an only child and son of a school teacher. His father died when he was just 5 years old, but limited resources led him at the age of 16 to become a stowaway on an inter-island ship headed towards Puerto Rico. In 1917, he traveled to New York, the place where he would eventually build his legacy and call home. Jones arrived in the state and landed in historic Harlem as large migration of West Indians and black communities grew.
You ask why this was happening in Harlem? It's probably happening in every black community, certainly in the North. People were really, I'd say, Northeast. You went down to Philadelphia, they were very active. In Boston, things were happening. In New York City, they were happening. They were happening where blacks were starting to say, hey, they're fighting for an end to legal segregation. In the South, we know we have segregation here in the North, enforced by culture and mores. We want to see the end of that.
During that time, politics in those areas were shifting from Republican to Democratic. Before entering the political scene, Jones worked as an elevator porter, longshoreman, and delivered ice. He began his political journey in 1921 when he became involved in local politics while serving as an election inspector. He was thrusted into organized politics when he was denied access into the whites-only Cayuga Democratic Club while trying to deliver voter registration books. Jones campaigned for mayoral Democratic candidate John Hylan, but he declined to reward Jones for his work. Originally a member of an integrated club, Jones rose in the ranks before forming his own political club, the George Washington Carver Democratic Club of Harlem. Its mission was to help blacks enter the political landscape. The club was unique not only for just having black members, but for having black leadership.
It's not politics as we even think of it today. It was the internal strength of the Democratic Party and its struggle to achieve the role of leadership within the Democratic Party. And that's how it was marvelous when J. Raymond Jones became head of Tammany Hall, how Hewlin Jack became your first borough president. But those were hard-fought battles.
In 1944, Jones became a district leader in Harlem. He decided who got patronage posts and judgeships, as well as organized elections in the 13th District. In 1945, Mayor William O'Dwyer tapped Jones to help organize the Harlem vote for his election. Upon O'Dwyer's victory, he appointed Jones as his personal secretary, then aide to the Housing and Building Commissioner. With the appointment, Jones became one of the highest-ranking black men in city government at the time. But O'Dwyer resigned from office on accusations of corruption and mob ties in 1950, and Jones left his position as district leader soon after. Jones returned to city politics in 1958, re-winning his district leadership in a country galvanized by the civil rights movement. In 1960, he promised his support to Lyndon B. Johnson's presidential campaign during the Democratic National Convention. Allegedly, he even refused a bribe from the Kennedy team. Though Johnson eventually joined Kennedy's ticket, Jones remained on the outs with the man he believed arranged the bribe, Bobby Kennedy. The next year, Jones was called in on another mayoral race, this time for Robert Wagner. Jones's support for Wagner secured his nomination and eventual victory in 1961. It showcased Jones's political might, making him a potential new leader for the city's Democratic Party. In 1962, Jones was elected to New York City Council. The Democratic Party in New York City was organized through Tammany Hall. Founded in 1789, Tammany Hall had a storied legacy including Aaron Burr and former President Martin Van Buren. But over its 150 years, the club was synonymous with greed and corruption. In December 1964, Jones became its chairman, becoming the first black to head the New York County Democratic Committee.
It was fascinating to go in there. It almost reminded me, because I had some familiarity with the village, particularly where Italians lived, and it reminded me of almost a little mafia. They had their goals, they had their plans, they walked in a common theme, and they were highly successful.
Jones won that position with the support of his ally, Mayor Wagner. At the time, Jones was the highest-ranking African-American party official in the country.
Someone came to me and asked me whether I was prepared to run against the assemblyman for district leader. He had both of the jobs. And that person was the first African-American Democratic County leader in the history of the United States. I was so excited, I did not know what to do. But everybody in Lenox Avenue knew that I was going to do something to make a move sometime. So I went to Dave Noble, who operated the local undertaker, and I asked, what do I do? What do I do? J. Raymond Jones is prepared to meet with my followers. I got no place to meet. I got no followers. He says, why don't you use this place? I said, this place, well, that mean you want me to bring it in? He says, this doesn't have to be this way. Put them in the bag, close the joint down, I'll get Charlie Freed to provide all of the cans for the sodas and whatnot. We'll get Sam Walton to provide the hors d'oeuvres and the sandwiches. We'll get the beauty parlor people, we'll get the boys to clean it up. They fixed up that undertaker parlor, and everybody on the block was invited. When that limousine came up with J. Raymond Jones, I was ready.
One of the successes of his short term was the elevation of Constance Baker Motley. She was the first black woman to serve on the federal courts. But after this career highlight, his tenure as chairman was troubled by a fight with Senator Bobby Kennedy over state judge appointments. One in particular was to back Supreme Court Justice Samuel J. Silverman, of which the party was split. Jones said that he and Senator Kennedy were at such odds and that he could not function effectively against the opposition from Senator Kennedy of his reformed party. That rift forced Jones to resign from his chairman post of Tammany Hall in 1967.
Oh, sure. You must remember that he supported Judge Silverman for surrogate court. That was a power play because the man he was running against, the candidate who had been of the New York County Democratic organization, I think his name was Kaplan. He'd been a congressman. He was a Supreme Court judge. He was totally eligible for the job. He was not a hack or incompetent, but I suppose this is a fight where Kennedy wanted to show that he was taking over, and he won it. Kennedy won it. I had the unfortunate circumstance of my one experience with J. Raymond Jones, was he invited me to come see him. I was in the state senate. I had just been elected, I think, and he said, "We're going to see how much courage you have." I said, "Why?" He says, "I want you to read this letter." It was a letter attacking Kennedy for what he was doing to Kaplan.
Jones became known as the Harlem Fox and dedicated his life to serving the people of New York. His career was built on the possibility that anything could be done for the people of New York. They just needed a fighter in their corner. In 1970, Jones went back to the Virgin Islands and remained there for 20 years. But he returned to Harlem, the city he loved, and died in 1991 at the age of 91. Jones's work for the Harlem community has transcended through generations, from the work of Reverend Al Sharpton to the election of the first black Democratic leader of the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries. His legend lives on in those who dedicate their lives to serve others and in making the world and their communities a fairer, just, and better place for generations to come. To watch classic Black films, documentaries, and much more, tune in today to American Legacy Network, Black History Made Every Day.